In the quiet town of Columbia, Illinois, the Coleman family seemed to have it all: a beautiful home, stable jobs, and a reputation in the community. Chris Coleman, a head of security for Joyce Meyer Ministries, lived with his wife Sherry and their two sons, Gavin and Garrett. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect life, tensions were brewing. Chris and Sherry's relationship had started in 1997, and their early years seemed promising. Chris, a former Marine, had joined the ministry as a bodyguard, while Sherry was known for her warmth and kindness. Their children, Gavin and Garrett, were lively and loved by those around them. But as Chris's demanding job took him away frequently, cracks began to show. Sherry often felt isolated and alone, which strained the family dynamics. In May 2009, the peaceful life of the Coleman family was shattered. Chris returned home from his morning workout to find his wife and children murdered. Inside their home, a chilling crime scene awaited him. Sherry lay dead in their bedroom, and the two boys were found in their beds. The walls were covered in spray-painted messages, many of which were directed at Sherry, indicating a personal and premeditated attack. Upon arriving at the scene, investigators were struck by Chris's unusual behavior. He appeared distant, almost detached from the horror of the situation. This reaction raised suspicions, and further investigation revealed disturbing details. Police uncovered threatening emails, allegedly from a stalker, sent to Chris before the murders. However, the messages seemed to mirror the words found on the walls of the house, suggesting a deeper connection. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered Chris's hidden affair with Tara Lice, a close friend of Sherry's. This affair added a layer of betrayal to the tragedy, as Chris had promised Tara that he would soon be free to start a new life with her. His motive for murder became clearer. He wanted to remove the obstacles to his relationship with Tara. As divorce would jeopardize his position in the ministry. Forensic analysis later confirmed the link between Chris and the crime scene. The spray paint used on the walls matched a can he had recently purchased, and the threatening emails were traced back to his personal computer. The evidence against Chris was overwhelming, and he was arrested. In court, the prosecution detailed Chris's betrayal and deception. Despite maintaining his innocence, the evidence was undeniable. Chris's motive, rooted in his desire to be with Tara without losing his career, was clear. He was convicted, and the case closed, but the impact on the Columbia community was profound. The tragic events left scars that would never heal, reminding everyone of the hidden struggles that can exist behind closed doors. Doug Benfield, a former Navy veteran turned technology consultant, was a man admired for his integrity and quiet strength. His life appeared idyllic, especially after losing his first wife, Renee, to a heart condition. Doug became a pillar of stability for his young daughter. However, his sudden marriage to Ashley, a ballerina half his age, soon exposed cracks in his seemingly perfect life. Their relationship, which appeared strong on the surface, simmered with unspoken tension, often marked by strained interactions and subtle changes in Doug's behavior. The peaceful community of Lakewood Ranch, Florida, where Doug and Ashley lived, seemed like the ideal setting for their marriage. Yet behind closed doors, a darker story unfolded. Friends and family began to notice Doug's withdrawn demeanor, and there were whispers of conflicts between him and Ashley. What was once a relationship built on mutual respect began to show signs of strain, leading to a violent confrontation that would shatter the tranquility of their home. On the night of the tragedy, Doug's home was found in disarray, with signs of a violent struggle in the living room. Broken objects and bloodstains led toward the door, while Doug's body lay lifeless, his injuries suggesting an attempt to escape. Ashley, who had apparently fled the scene, knocked on a neighbor's door, telling them that Doug had attacked her. She claimed self-defense, but inconsistencies in her story quickly emerged. Forensic evidence didn't align with Ashley's version of events. Doug's injuries didn't match a self-defense struggle, and the absence of defensive wounds on Ashley raised doubts about her claims. Detective Evelyn Hayes, a seasoned investigator, was assigned to the case. She discovered troubling inconsistencies in Ashley's allegations, especially when she interviewed neighbors and friends who described Doug as calm and kind, not violent as Ashley had claimed. As Hayes dug deeper, she uncovered a web of tensions involving other figures in Doug's life, including Ashley's protective mother, Alicia, who had disapproved of Doug, and Frank, Doug's business partner, with whom he had a fallout. These individuals had motives, and each relationship revealed additional layers of conflict. Ashley's claims of abuse, including allegations of poisoning and threats, were never supported by evidence, and her attempts to manipulate the narrative became evident. Detective Hayes continued to peel back the layers of deceit and manipulation, focusing on the inconsistencies and contradictions that pointed to Ashley as the likely perpetrator of Doug's death. As the investigation unfolded, the case grew more complex, revealing a tangled web of personal grievances, manipulation, and betrayal. The disappearance of 17-year-old Zion Foster from East Point, Michigan, shocked her close-knit community. Zion was known for her responsible and respectful nature, making her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. Her mother immediately reported her missing, launching a full-scale investigation. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Zion's disappearance wasn't as straightforward as it initially seemed. The investigation would reveal a dark betrayal, and the person Zion trusted most, her cousin, Jalen Brayer, would play a central role in the tragic events that followed. Zion had always been reliable, and the fact that she hadn't returned home raised immediate concerns. Her mother, desperate for answers, began asking everyone who might have seen or heard from Zion, and the police focused their efforts on tracking her last known movements. Phone records were examined, friends and family were questioned, and soon, investigators learned that Zion's cousin, Jalen, had been the last person to see her. At first, Jalen's story seemed plausible. He told authorities that he and Zion had hung out and spent time together before they parted ways, with Zion telling him about her improving relationship with her mother, her plans for prom, and her ambitions of getting her own apartment. The calm and nonchalant nature of his account led the investigators to believe that perhaps it was just a case of a teenager spending time with a cousin. However, as the investigation progressed, Jalen's actions and inconsistencies in his statements began to raise suspicion. Though Jalen's initial story seemed ordinary, a deeper dive into his behavior and the timeline he provided began to show discrepancies. After Zion's disappearance, Jalen seemed unusually nervous and agitated, which concerned investigators. He began to act defensively when questioned, and his alibi began to unravel. Further scrutiny revealed that his movements didn't match up with his initial claims. His phone records, which were critical in the investigation, showed that Jalen had been in the area where Zion had been last seen, and the data indicated suspicious driving patterns after the time Zion was known to have disappeared. This raised the possibility that Jalen might not have been truthful about what happened. The inconsistencies in his account were hard to ignore, and the pressure from the investigation mounted. When brought in for further questioning, Jalen's story began to shift. His answers became evasive, and detectives noticed that they seemed rehearsed, as though he were trying to cover something up. The more they probed, the more it seemed like Jalen wasn't just a witness in Zion's case, he was likely involved in her disappearance. As investigators continued to piece together the evidence, Jalen's nervous behavior, combined with his inconsistent statements and suspicious phone records, made him the prime suspect in Zion's case. The detectives now believed that Jalen knew more than he had let on, and the pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together in an unsettling way. Despite his attempts to deflect attention, the mounting evidence against him eventually led to a shocking revelation. Jalen had been lying all along, and the truth about Zion's fate was far darker than anyone had imagined. His once close relationship with Zion, built on trust and shared family experiences, was shattered by betrayal. Jalen, who had been like an older brother to Zion, had broken that trust in the most devastating way possible. Zion's disappearance, once thought to be a tragic mystery, now seemed like the result of a carefully concealed crime, and Jalen was at the heart of it. As her community continued to grieve the loss of a young life full of promise, the tragic story of Zion's disappearance highlighted the danger that can lurk even in the most familiar and trusted relationships. It became clear that betrayal could come from the most unexpected places where trust had once been unconditional. The investigation into Zion's disappearance not only exposed the painful truth about Jalen's involvement, but also left the community with a deep sense of loss and the lingering question of why a cousin, once so close, would betray Zion in such a heartbreaking way. In August 2021, Megan Newborough, a 23-year-old woman from Nuneaton, Warwickshire, England, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Megan had left her home on the evening of August 6th, around 7:30 p.m., telling her mother, Elaine, that she was meeting someone for a walk. Her father, Anthony, expected her to return in a couple of hours, but by 9:30 p.m., Megan hadn't come back. Concerned, her parents sent messages, but they went unanswered. By the following day, when Megan still hadn't returned home, her parents reported her missing. Megan, affectionately called Meg by her family, was born on a hot summer day in 1997 and was the middle child, with an older sister, Claire, and a younger brother, John. The siblings were close-knit, growing up together in Nuneaton. Megan had a deep love for animals, often caring for pets like hamsters, rabbits, and a dog named Frank. She was also passionate about dancing. As an adult, Megan worked in human resources at Eoc Bricks, a brick manufacturing company. Colleagues described her as kind and always willing to lend a helping hand. On the night of her disappearance, Megan had been planning to meet a romantic interest, 30-year-old Ross Mallam. The two had met through work, where Megan worked in HR and Ross was a brickmaker. Megan spoke fondly of Ross, describing him as thoughtful and kind, often sending her sweet morning texts. However, her family knew little about him, as Megan hadn't been seeing him for long, although they had known each other for a few years. As her disappearance raised alarm, Warwickshire police tracked Megan's white Citroën C3 using an automatic number plate recognition system. Surveillance cameras showed that her car had been seen in the area, leading investigators to focus on her last known movements and who she had been with. Despite the police efforts, the truth about what happened to Megan remained unclear, and her family, especially her mother Elaine, were left in anguish, hoping for answers about their daughter's sudden and unexplained disappearance. Megan's family and friends were devastated, struggling to understand how someone they had trusted could have played a role in her vanishing. The investigation into her case would soon reveal unsettling truths about her relationship with Ross Mallam, and the community would be forever marked by the tragedy of her disappearance. In the months leading up to Megan Newbrow's tragic death, her family experienced a growing sense of unease when Megan's boyfriend, Ross Mallam, began to show increasingly erratic behavior. Megan had been dating Ross for some time, and their relationship appeared to have ups and downs, with Ross often expressing insecurities and struggles related to his sexual performance. Despite these issues, Megan remained supportive, believing she could help him. However, their dynamic shifted dramatically. On the night of Megan's disappearance, around 9:50 p.m., her family began to feel a sense of relief when they thought she was simply driving around late. But when she didn't answer her phone, their concern grew. Calls went straight to voicemail. The police quickly became involved and retraced Megan's steps. They visited Ross's parents' house in Kill, about a 40-minute drive from Megan's home, but found Ross was not there. He was drinking at a pub in the nearby town of Elborough. An officer reached Ross by phone, informing him that Megan had been reported missing. Later, police visited Ross's home in Keyshowe, where they found signs of struggle items knocked over, a suspicious wet spot that Ross claimed was spilled coffee, and dark smears on the baseboards that appeared to be blood. These findings led investigators to arrest Ross on suspicion of kidnapping. Ross's confession revealed more chilling details. He admitted to strangling Megan and then cutting her throat post-mortem. After killing her, he attempted to cover up the crime by throwing away evidence, including Megan's clothes and his blood-stained items. Surveillance footage also showed him disposing of items at a local fitness center, including Megan's glasses and some of her personal belongings. The investigation revealed that Megan had suffered 14 cuts to her neck, and her body was found in a lay-by on Charlie Road, near Woodhouse Eaves, hours after her death. DNA evidence linked Ross to the crime, including a glove with both his and Megan's DNA found nearby. Ross's defense suggested he acted in a fit of rage due to past trauma, blaming a history of abuse for his actions. However, the prosecution painted a different picture, arguing that Ross had killed Megan out of anger after an intimate encounter went wrong. Despite his claims of remorse, the jury convicted Ross of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 23 years before parole eligibility. Megan's family, devastated by her loss, honored her memory by raising funds for charity and establishing the Megan Newbrow Foundation. Her death left a profound void in their lives, but they continued to live in her memory, fighting for the causes she held dear. Stephen's arrest for the murder of his wife, Rhonda, followed years of suspicion and investigation. Rhonda's family, particularly her mother, relentlessly pursued justice, urging detectives to keep the case open. Eventually, evidence pointed to Stephen as responsible for Rhonda's death, leading to his arrest at San Francisco Airport in 2004. After 14 months in jail, his bail was lowered to $250,000, and he was released with an ankle monitor. Stephen's defense claimed Rhonda's death was an accident, They argued that her injuries, found mostly below the waist, indicated she fell feet first, not a result of being pushed. They also suggested Rhonda may have taken her own life due to depression and dissatisfaction with their relationship. However, Rhonda's family rejected this theory, believing Stephen was attempting to shift blame. Evidence surfaced that Stephen had been involved in a romantic relationship with Rhonda's 16-year-old sister, Melanie, giving him a possible motive for murder. In addition, Stephen had a history of inappropriate behavior, including a conviction for sexual abuse in 2005 and troubling past relationships. Despite the evidence, the prosecution struggled to prove the murder, and in 2017, Stephen accepted a plea deal for criminally negligent homicide, serving time for the charges but avoiding a murder conviction. Rhonda's family felt betrayed, believing he should have received a harsher sentence. Stephen's later interview and comments about the death raised further suspicions about his involvement. Mike, a successful businessman, had a tumultuous personal life that ultimately led to a violent crime. Mike, once a bright student, was involved in extracurricular activities like the Boy Scouts and church, and later earned a master's degree in business administration. He had a demanding career that kept him away from his daughters, Caroline and Kate, contributing to a strained marriage with his first wife, Dee. After 25 years, Dee asked for a divorce, prompting Mike to venture into internet dating, where he met Susan, a 38-year-old nurse. Their relationship moved quickly, with Susan moving into Mike's home, and the couple married in 2007. Despite appearing perfect to outsiders, their marriage faced challenges, including Susan's temper and strained relationships with Mike's daughters. A prenuptial agreement was drafted after an explosive argument at one of Mike's daughters' parties, which made Mike worry about Susan's financial irresponsibility and their future. Susan's relationship with Mike's daughters became increasingly strained, and Caroline felt uncomfortable around her new stepmother. In 2016, despite their issues, Mike and Susan seemed to put on a united front during Caroline's wedding. However, just 3 weeks after, Mike revealed that Susan had physically assaulted him following an argument about the wedding's budget. Susan was arrested for domestic battery but later entered alcohol counseling and anger management. The couple took a temporary break, with Susan moving to a condo. In February 2018, their problems escalated when Mike called 911, claiming an intruder had attacked Susan. Police arrived to find Susan critically injured but no signs of forced entry. Susan, once conscious, accused Mike of the attack, alleging he stabbed her after a heated argument. Mike was arrested for attempted murder, and further charges of false imprisonment and obstruction were added. Months later, Mike faced additional charges for attempting to hire an inmate to murder Susan. During his trial, it was revealed that Mike and Susan's marriage had been fraught with tension, especially over Mike's charitable activities and his friends, leading to the shocking accusations.